Hey, have you ever heard guys talking about girls and they say the term, I got lucky? Well, I think the reason why that is most guys don't know how to get a girl home on purpose. What they do is they go in and they talk to the girl and they try and get her really attracted and really invested and really committed, but they don't actually know the right way to ask her to go with them, and they don't know the right way to set up the interaction and set up the events so that it's likely that it will happen. And so when it does happen, it feels like they got lucky. What I'm gonna teach you right now is how to pull on purpose, how to do it in a predictable, reliable, methodical way so that you can, when I look at guys that are good at game, the biggest distinction between a guy that's intermediate and a guy that's advanced is the intermediate guy will have a lot of girls get into him and he won't get anything out of it. The advanced guy, when a girl gets into him, he knows how to problem solve, he knows how to set up the pull, he gets her home, and he gets an actual result. So it's the difference between game that looks good and game that is effective. And a lot of that is knowing how to seed and structure the pull. So that's what we're gonna talk about. First thing you need to know about pulling. The pull starts with the first minute of the interaction. A lot of guys say like, oh, so I talked to this girl all night and then I asked her to go home and she told me that, she was busy, she has a boyfriend, she's with her family, she didn't drive here, and yada, 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 right? I'm like, what should I do in that situation? I'm like, well, guess what? By the time you got there, you already fucked it up, okay? You already messed up if you're in that situation. The pull should have started happening from the first minute, okay? Here's why. First of all, a big part of pulling is what we call screening. Screening is finding out the girl's logistics, if it's possible for her to pull, finding out what her situation is, if she's like, if she has a boyfriend, if she's married, if her friends are very protective, those kind of things, right? Screening for her personality type, how much she's had sex, how open she is, what her attitude is. Screening is a big part of pulling because on any given night, there's certain girls that are pullable and certain girls that are not. And it's not absolute, right? It's not to say that some girls absolutely unpullable, even if you were like, even if you're like Jamie Foxx, you can't take her home. Okay, fair enough, right? But some girls are much easier to pull than others. And it's not even dependent on the girl. Some girls are very easy to pull one night, not so easy to pull another night. And so if the girl's not so easy to pull, you may be better off time-wise, effort-wise, investment-wise to just take a number and not waste your time there. So that's the first step, is running your night in a strategic way so you know what girls are actually pullable. So screening is a big part of it. But the other reason to close early is this. If you close early, you find out the objections early, right? Let's say that the typical interaction from meet to pull is 45 minutes to an hour and a half. That's pretty typical in a night game situation. Now, if that's the case, and you find out what her objections are, ideally without hearing no and without hearing them as objections, within the first 5 or 10 minutes in the interaction, that means you have between like 35 minutes and an hour and 20 minutes, something like that, to structure the interaction, get to know her, and throughout the entire thing, subtly frame away the objections and subtly solve the problems and suddenly build value in ways which supersede those problems. On the other hand, if you do that whole interaction, you get to, an hour and 20 minutes in, and then, you find out the objection, you have like 2, 3, 4 minutes left before she has to get dragged away by her friends. Now you don't have a lot of time to solve that. And also, maybe you've set a lot of frames early on that are gonna hurt you in solving those problems or hurt you in getting through those obstacles. The earlier you find out the obstacles, the better off you're gonna be. Also, if you signal the idea of the pull early on and plant it in her mind, it gives her time to get used to it, to acclimate to it, and to develop this frame of we. One of the most important words you can use in pickup is the word we, right? Because that implies you and she are together. And if you imply the idea of you guys going and doing something together, you put that vision of the two of you together in her mind, and that increases the feeling of we in the set. Okay, so you want to give her time to get used to it, time to grow into it, that sort of stuff as well. So the first thing is, they say close early, close often, close late. All right, close as early as you possibly can. For me, as soon as the girl starts qualifying to me or complying with me or giving me compliments, any of those things, it's time for me to start very softly closing. And that's the next point. The close should be soft. The close should be like the warm embrace of a comfortable blanket. It should not be like a ton of bricks falling on you. Okay? A lot of guys are having this normal, very platonic interaction, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, do you want to go to my place? The girl's like, what the fuck? Where'd that come from? I just got knocked sideways, right? Instead, it should be an interaction that's already a little bit sexually charged, and then the close just kind of sneaks up on her, like, oh, that's kind of, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, cool. And then she's like wrapped up in it and she goes, right? Jeffy has the metaphor, he calls it the grease slide, which is shit at the top of the slide. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Whoop, getting fucked, right? Like it just happened. And the reason it feels like it just happened is instead of being one big step that just like falls out of the sky like an anvil, It's a bunch of little tiny steps that you barely even notice. Here's an example. Instead of saying, hey, let's go to my place, you say, hey, you know what? I really enjoy talking to you. There's a part of me that's kind of tempted to do something with you later, but you know what? Let's just hold off on that for now. We'll talk and get to know each other a bit better. And then later on, maybe you bring it up. You're like, oh, you know what? You'd totally love this place. It's too bad we can't go yet. I have my friends, so we'll have to that'll have to wait. Right? So you're subtly bringing it up, but you're bringing it up in a way that's not asking, not needy, and she can't say no to because you already sort of reject it. And that's what's called seeding the pull. That's putting the idea out there, so it's almost as though it's her idea, or at least she's a part of the idea. And a great thing there is because you sort of denied it to her, you put it out there but denied it to her, it makes her feel as though she'll have to work for it. We value in life the things we work for, right? If somebody just gives you something, like, oh, thanks, whatever, no big deal. But if you work your ass off to earn something and buy it, you're like, wow, I treasure it. I'll keep it safe. I'll take care of it. Or like, say you bought the exact same pair of shoes, and you either got it at Goodwill for like $10 somehow, or you bought it for like $200 in the store. I guarantee you're going to take better care of the pair of shoes you paid $200 for. Okay, and why? Because you invested in it. So part of this seeding the pull and part of like phrasing it in the negative and making it seem like she can't quite get it is letting her feel like she won you over. Right? And so the next part of seeding the pull that's super, super critical is qualifying. Okay, qualifying, making her feel like she earned you. Now, obviously, if it's purely for a one-night stand, the qualification can be purely on value, or it can be purely on fun and even like sexual stuff. If you're trying to pull the girl and then have more of a relationship frame, then you should qualify on things like intelligence, creativity, lifestyle, things like that maybe you care about on a deeper level. Although do be careful, because if you get too intimate and boyfriendy, it can actually hurt you on the pull. And here's why. So girls kind of have two modes of having sex. They have the sex that they have with like a guy that's like a player, and they have the sex with a guy that they feel like is in the boyfriend category. And for the player guy, they don't care about being perceived as slutty because it's a pure value transaction. It's purely the fun. For a boyfriend category guy, they don't want to be perceived as slutty because if a girl's your girlfriend, you're a boyfriend, and you perceive her as slutty, well, back on the savannas of Africa, if she were to get pregnant, you wouldn't have full faith that baby is yours, and that way you might not be as likely to help her raise it or take care of it, or you might have some suspicion of her, right? And so for a girl, if she's looking for a relationship with you, she's going to judge you on a different criteria, and she's going to judge herself on a different criteria, more importantly, so she's going to try not to be super slutty around you. So when I try and pull, a lot of times I go out of my way to be more playerish than necessary. Right? I'll say things like, I'm not boyfriend material, or let's just have fun and let the grown-ups handle the serious stuff, or let's not ruin this with facts or feelings. Or I'll be like, you know what, I've just met you, so like let's like keep this at a distance. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what, let's not even know each other's names. It's better that way, so you can't stalk me. Right? I'll say all kinds of stuff like that, which is extremely, extremely like disqualifying, off-putting, playerish. Now it's done in jest a little bit. It's done tongue-in-cheek. I'm kidding, sort of. But the fact of the matter is it conveys this whole like, this is fun, this is a short-term situation, this is just like for tonight, as opposed to if I were to try and pull a girl and I tell her how amazing she is and how I want to hang out with her for all of the next week and how I'd like to take her on dates and have her meet my parents. If I start saying stuff like that, I'm putting myself in the boyfriend category, and that's going to create a lot of objections. One thing I ran into a lot when I hadn't really learned to pull is I'd spend all my time and effort getting a girl really, really into me, and then we'd be about to leave together, and I'd tell her something that like really impressed her. She'd be like, wow, that's really, really cool. That's awesome. Like I knew you were cute and fun, but you're actually like really smart, or you're like a really together guy. I really like you. I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's get in the cab and go. She's like, no, you should take me on a date. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll totally take you. Let's go home though. She's like, oh no. Take my number. You should take me on a date. And what happened is that thing that I told her that impressed her also put me in the boyfriend category. And so because of that, now all of a sudden she doesn't want to appear slutty with me. She's like, oh, I better not ruin it with this guy. And ironically, with it being me, I'm just like, that's retarded. And she actually lost me for exactly that reason in many cases. So be very careful about the frames that you're setting as well. You want to have that lighthearted, playerish frame. The frame that I like to have is the frame that like the world will end tomorrow. It's like when the sun comes up, everything is over. And what I mean by that is don't plan on seeing her later. Don't plan on starting a relationship with her. Just plan on having the maximum amount of fun and plan on sleeping with her tonight. And in fact, have that mentality that if it doesn't happen tonight, it'll never happen. A couple more topics that I find super, super critical in helping me pull. The first one is what I call covering the exits. And what I mean by this is when you're gonna take a girl home, you should expect certain objections. I don't have sex on the first date or the first night. I'm not that kind of girl. I have to get up in the morning. I can't leave my friends. Those kinds of things, right? Now, the funny thing is, those are very, very difficult to overcome because they're not just objections, they're sort of conditions. They exist based on actual facts in the real world to an extent. However, a great way to get past them is to give the objection first. So for example, one thing I'll do a lot of times right after I make out with a girl for the first time would be like, I like you, but let's not make the sex tonight. Or you just be like, I'm not gonna have sex with you, right? And what that does is because you said it first, she no longer has that objection. Of course, she could say it later, but if she does, you'll be like, yeah, I told you that half an hour ago, right? And so by stealing the objections ahead of time, you get rid of her ability to say them. And so when it comes time to actually go home, she has no real excuses not to, right? And it's very predictable. Like you're gonna hear the same 5 or 6 excuses every single time, so why not give them first? The other thing that it does, which is massively good, is it's a disqualifier. It's pushing her away. So again, it's further establishing that frame that she is chasing you, okay? Finally, once you've done all your groundwork, you've seeded things, you've set the right frames, you've disqualified, you've set it up so that it's a win for her and like she's winning you over rather than losing. You've set the right idea that like this is fun for now, it's not all boyfriendy, girlfriendy. Then what you must do is you must lead. Once you've done your groundwork, you need to trust yourself and just go for it. A lot of guys don't pull the trigger. They just sit there and sit there and sit there and hope the girl will pull them. And that won't happen because in order to pull you, the girl would have to develop this self-image inside of herself of being slutty. And girls don't want to do that, okay? They want to avoid being slutty, so you have to be the slutty one. You have to be the leader and make things happen. In order to do that, one final little tip is something I call baby stepping. Baby stepping is the idea that it's hard to make a big sale, but it's a lot easier to make 5 or 6 little sales. So instead of, hey, do you want to go back to my place? Which, by the way, another point, don't say things that are red flags. If you say my place, red flag. Say, let's go have sex, red flag. Instead, hey, I know this really great place where we can chill and really get to know each other, right? See how by saying it a different way, you make it so that she can say yes to it without being slutty. But instead of saying, hey, let's go to this crazy place as the first step, what you might do, what's a really good idea, is move her around within the venue. So say it's day game, go take her for a smoothie, take her for a quick bite to eat, and then take her home. Or take her for a drink and then take her home, right? If it's night game, take her to a different place in the bar, go sit down with her, isolate her from her friends and talk one-on-one for a little bit. And then after that, go ahead and take her home. Those little venue changes are a lot easier to do than the big venue change, but they establish the habit that you're leading and she's following. They establish the precedent that she's gone with you several times, and it's always led to a good experience. The more times she's said yes and it's led to something good, the more likely she is to say the next yes, okay? So that's baby stepping. Biggest thing though with pulling are 2 things and their mentalities. One is the mentality to be closing, and the second is the mentality to start seeding the pull as early as possible, all right? You wanna be looking at the situation as though it's to be won. Don't go in looking for like a good feeling. Don't go in hoping for a number. Go in hoping for the maximum result, which is having sex with her that day or that night. Now, if as you screen you find out it's not possible, it's fine to settle for a number. It's fine to settle for a softer close. But go in believing in the possibility and with the idea that you're gonna try and make it happen. If you do everything in your power and it doesn't happen, that's fine. But for you to walk away without having tried, that's not okay. I hear from a lot of guys, I went in and I talked to this girl and it was great, but it just went platonic and never went anywhere. I go, you know what? That's your fault. That's your fault. If you tried to take it somewhere and she rejected you, fine. You did the best you could. But if you never tried, if A, you didn't sleep with her, and B, you never heard the word no, you didn't try. Okay? You need to at least give her the opportunity to say no. Now, of course, no means no, right? If she says a hard no, back the fuck off. We're not doing anything rapey or like super crazy here, right? But at least ask for the order. She can say no if she wants, but at least ask her to go with you at the very minimum.